Okay, now we're progressing down into the abdominal cavity. That's what we're going to do now. So first thing we're going to look at is the liver. So you can see the right and left lobe of the liver. We're going to turn that around. You can see the various impressions that are left on the liver. We can talk about each one of those. So the first one, of course, this is the gastric impression here. Okay, here we have the colic inflection made from the upper part of the colon, and then the renal impression here. We can also see the gallbladder right here, and we can also see the inferior vena cava right here. We can locate the different lobes. Of course, we showed you the right and left lobe, but there's two other lobes we can see from this side. The best way to decipher between these two is the gallbladder is right next to this square quadrate lobe, and then right next to the vena cava is your caudate lobe. Okay, so that pretty much takes care of the liver. Now also up in here we have the stomach. So you can see the stomach here. And you can see some of the arteries of the stomach here. We might as well include those now. We can see the left gastric artery here. And you remember the stomach sits on the left-hand side of the abdominal cavity. And then you can see the right gastric arteries here. And then if we go underneath, a little hard to see this here, but you can see the left and right gastroepiploic. So if we're looking at this side, this would be your left gastroepiploic, and then over here would be the right gastroepiploic. And then of course going down more inside with other organs, you can see the pancreas here. Okay, over to the left hand side, which is only on one side, you see the spleen here. And then as you look down below that, now you can see all the mesentery here. So you can see the what we call the ascending colon here, the right colic flexure here, and then the transverse colon with the left colic flexure, and then the left descending colon here down to the sigmoid, and then onto the rectum. So now as we pull these out, you can see the small intestine here. If we pull these pieces out, one thing we can see here, again, we can see the arteries that are feeding the colon and the intestines here. We talked about those before as being the superior and inferior mesenteric arteries. So remember, on the right hand side, all of the small intestine, which is here, and the ascending colon, and then the right colic flexure, which would be right here, and the transverse colon that we took off right here, all of that is supplied by the superior mesenteric artery, and then the inferior mesenteric artery supplies the left colic flexure, the descending colon, sigmoid colon, and then the rectum. So now let's move over to this other model here, and we can see some of the structures now with all of the mesentery out. You can see the two kidneys, right and left kidneys here. You can see the adrenal glands on top of the kidneys. And then here, this is a really good place where we can see the celiac trunk here. Okay, then the superior mesenteric artery, and then below that, the inferior mesenteric artery. And of course, we can see the descending aorta, and then the common iliac branches here. And we also, of course, have the vena cava with the same branches down here. That would be the common iliac veins. And as we get down a little bit deeper, then you can see, if you can bring the camera in there just a little bit, you can see the internal iliac and external iliac, which then continues down and becomes the femoral artery. We can see the muscles in here as well. You can see a few more muscles than we could see on the cadaver. You can see, of course, the psoas major muscle here, but you can also see the iliacus muscle, and right here, one that we mentioned in class, the quadratus lumborum muscle. You can also, if you look really close, you can actually see the different abdominal muscles here, the external oblique, internal oblique, and then if you look really close here, you can see the striations of the transverse oblique muscle here. Some other things we can point out here, you can see the ureters coming down here from each kidney. So they're easy to identify, as well as the gonadal arteries and veins. They kind of come down as like a twisted chain when you get down to this area. Okay, you can also see, interesting right here on this model, you can see the lumbar arteries and veins here. So that pretty much tells us, shows us all of the internal components of the abdominal cavity.